part of Michael Cole and Jim Ross, as Michael Cole has been tweeting a lot of photos and basically been making a reputation for himself off of besmirching Jim Ross and actually committing the very fatal act of discrimination of character. I'm not really enjoying the Jim Ross Michael Cole angle. I really don't think I'm very interested in seeing where it's going to go, because it has similar elements to the Michael Cole Jerry Lawler feud, which reached a point of climax at WrestleMania 27 with Michael Cole becoming undefeated at WrestleMania with a disqualification victory after Jerry Lawler originally won the match, but the decision was reversed by the official. I think that this Jim Ross Michael Cole feud is kind of pointless, because basically all the storyline is doing is making fun of Jim Ross and the reputation he has built up over the last 25-30 years. Jim Ross has a phenomenal reputation for doing commentary for almost every major promotion, including WCW. He also has a reputation, on the other hand, for being known for being fired from every organization he's been involved with. His problems with John Laurinaitis, the acting Raw general manager, have been well documented, and he's been fired countless times, especially from the WWE, by Laurinaitis and McMahon. But despite his unprofessionality in the past, I think Jim Ross has been able to overcome every obstacle he's been thrown in his professional wrestling career, and he was very influential in the careers of the fake Razor Ramon and Diesel, of course the fake Razor Ramon played by Rick Titan, and actually Rick Titan told me that his fondest memories of his wrestling career came from his days in Japan rather than in the WWE. He was very influential in the careers of Glenn Jacobs and Rick Titan, and he was very influential in the careers of Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, and Dr. Death, who is no longer with us after losing a 5-year battle with cancer. Jim Ross is very well known also for hiring some well-known talent such as Jack Swagger, and being responsible for John Cena main eventing 5 or 6 WrestleManias in the past. So his reputation definitely precedes itself, so I don't really know why WWE are going out of their way to make fun of Jim Ross the way they're doing on Twitter, with these derogatory photos of himself being posted on the Twitter accounts of Michael Cole and other people's Twitter accounts as well, who don't really respect the legacy Jim Ross has worked so hard to create. Stone Cold Steve Austin said in an interview a long time ago for WWE television and programming, he said that Jim Ross could make a snail race sound entertaining, and that could be true. Because I've seen many matches that Jim Ross's voice has been featured on. Now, he wasn't featured on matches like the WrestleMania 12 Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, which was the inaugural one, or he wasn't featured on matches like Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, with the phrase, "the irresistible force meeting the immovable object," which was a phrase quoted by Gorilla Monsoon, well-known commentator and WWE Hall of Famer who is no longer with us. He wasn't featured on any of those matches, but he's been featured on a lot of wonderful matches, including The Undertaker vs. Kane from WrestleMania 14, Stone Cold Steve Austin vs. The Rock from WrestleManias 15 and WrestleMania 19, and he's also been featured on some of the most well-known championship matches in WWE history. He's also conducted some very well-known interviews and very popular interviews, recently conducting a Shawn Michaels Bret Hart never-before-seen or heard interview for the Bret and Shawn DVD and Blu-ray, which is available now from WWE Home Video. He's also conducted some very in-depth interviews with people like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, and he's also conducted some very well-known interviews that some people would love to hear if they haven't had the opportunity to hear. I mean, his interviews with Stone Cold Steve Austin were phenomenal, and he's got a well-known reputation for conducting these interviews where the wrestlers actually sit side by side. And Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, his most recent side-by-side interview, is a perfect example of what Jim Ross is really capable of doing. His journalistic integrity is absolutely phenomenal, so I don't really know why WWE are making fun of him the way they are. I don't know why they wrote his face cancer into storylines years ago, or why they made fun of his anal surgery that he had to go through back in 2004, 2005. It's terrible. I mean, the treatment of Jim Ross on WWE television is absolutely terrible, and a number of radio shows, columnists, and journalists have talked about it a lot on their television programs, their radio shows, and in their written columns. I am one who talks about Jim Ross significantly a lot in my written column in this corner with Jonathan Clarke. I noted in one of my columns, actually, that I was very happy and proud over the fact that Jim Ross was returning to the Monday Night Raw commentary team on a full-time basis. I think he needs to return without the insults, without being involved in storylines and being booked in matches with Michael Cole. It just needs to go back to Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler doing commentary, because they're the team that was known on Monday Night Raw. And before Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler started doing it, was the three of them: Vince McMahon, Jim Ross, and Jerry Lawler. And I'll never forget the feud between Mr. McMahon and Jim Ross from 1996, when they used to have them sit side by side and do pay-per-view commentary together, promoting the feud and doing it very effectively. And Jim Ross was utilized very well when they were trying to cover up the fact that Mr. McMahon was the owner of the company. And when Mr. McMahon revealed himself for the first time in 1998-1999 as the owner of the company, Jim Ross did very well stepping in and becoming the voice of WWE, kind of like how Michael Cole is doing here now. Not only is he a great commentator, he's a great interviewer, and he was very influential in the careers of many wrestlers. John Cena, he wouldn't have gotten as far as he did in the business if it wasn't for Jim Ross signing him for 5 or 6 WrestleMania main events, and Jim Ross is going to be the reason why John Cena main events many WrestleManias to come. The up-and-coming John Cena Rock match, I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Ross had something to do with that one, and putting that into motion. I really enjoy seeing Jim Ross on WWE television, and without his voice on main event matches, especially at a WrestleMania, it doesn't feel right to me. I mean, at WrestleMania 27, when Jim Ross called the final half of the show and called the main event between John Cena and The Miz, it was awesome. Hearing Jim Ross's voice promoting The Rock and John Cena squaring off in the ring, and going to be hearing him at WrestleMania 28 this year, with the probability of his voice being on The Rock and John Cena match. It is great. It's awesome. WWE All-Stars, the video game, which is now available on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. Playing that game and hearing the voices of Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, the legendary commentary team, as the voiceovers for the matches, is a wonderful feeling. It kind of brings me back to 1996, 1997, when Jim Ross was doing commentary full-time. And I really like the idea of him being back full-time, and I hope he continues to remain with WWE. And if his time does run out, if the hourglass on Jim Ross expires, I have all the respect in the world for Jim Ross, and you won't hear me tell you anything negative about what Jim Ross has been doing. Some of the stuff he maybe did back in 1996, 1997, I didn't agree with. But that was when I really didn't understand what Jim Ross had meant to the business, or how many matches he had the privilege of calling back in 1997, 1998. I mean, he had such a phenomenal reputation for himself. And then I see these photographs that Michael Cole has been tweeting at twitter.com, Michael Cole, and I see these segments on Raw and SmackDown which have no business being involved with the program. I mean, what are they trying to do? Kill 2 or 3 minutes that they don't know what to do with? Have Michael Cole stand up on the table and call out Jim Ross the way he's been doing? We've never seen a one-on-one match involving Michael Cole and Jim Ross. And this Michael Cole challenge, the rules of it are simple. If Jim Ross can pull off a victory, Michael Cole vows to quit the WWE entirely, and we could see a WWE Future Endeavor statement released for the first time on WWE.com. I'd love to see Michael Cole take a break from doing on-television commentary, because his commentary really does bore me. Jonathan Coachman, as much as I hated him back in 2003, 2004, when they made him an in-ring performer and a on-again, off-again commentator for editions of Heat and several editions of Raw, during his run on Raw as the lead voice of Raw, I enjoyed Jonathan Coachman as much as I hated him. I enjoy him more than I enjoy hearing Michael Cole. So bringing Jonathan Coachman back as the lead voice of Raw, if you didn't want to make Jim Ross do it full-time, would be a great move. I know Coach has a phenomenal reputation for himself on ESPN, and I'll never forget hearing that interview between Jonathan Coachman and his former boss, Mr. McMahon, a few months after Jonathan Coachman parted ways with the WWE, and they kind of played it up as to how Jonathan Coachman worked for Vince McMahon at one point on ESPN's news program. It was kind of entertaining. I'd love to see Coach back. I'd really like to see somebody come in, even Josh Matthews. I think he's doing a great job, picking up where Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler left off as a commentary team. And he's really been carrying the SmackDown commentary team, because Booker T, I really don't understand why he's there doing commentary, and I really don't enjoy hearing Michael Cole on SmackDown after years and years of hearing him be the lead voice on SmackDown before he was ever considered to become the lead voice of the WWE entirely. I'd really like to see people like Josh Matthews pick up the ball and run with it. I'd really like to see Jonathan Coachman possibly return and become the lead voice of, say, SmackDown. If you want to, leave Michael Cole on Raw. That would make SmackDown commentary a little bit interesting to me, but the commentators of the past are long behind us. I mean, Booker T is doing a phenomenal job and really coming into his own as a commentator on SmackDown. When he first started off at the start of 2011, I originally thought he was coming back as an in-ring performer, and he's only wrestled once in a singles match against Jack Swagger on a recent edition of Raw. And apart from that, he was just signed to do commentary, which he's doing a great job with. But when he started off first, his commentary was a bit slow and a bit hard for me to get used to and be entertained by. So I'd really like to see somebody come in and do something that Michael Cole isn't doing that actually is interesting. I enjoyed commentary from JBL. I had the privilege of interviewing JBL in the past with Michael Porter, who is no longer here with us. And JBL mentioned to me that Michael Cole comes to editions of Raw and SmackDown very prepared with a lot of jot notes, and he actually calls the match to the best of his ability. But I can't see him actually doing that by the way he conducts himself on TV recently with such unprofessionalism. And he's supposed to be a guy who prides himself on journalistic integrity, something Jim Ross has done ever since day one with the exception of a few mishaps. I can't really see Michael Cole being the most prestigious commentator in the business, and I really don't think he has any business being featured in the WWE signatures that air at the start of every program, because they're absolutely boring and pointless featuring Michael Cole's voice. I mean, you're telling me Michael Cole is a more significant superstar than the likes of The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Undertaker. I mean, in my opinion, Michael Cole's voice doesn't need to be featured on matches featuring Triple H and The Undertaker or The Rock and John Cena. The voice of Jim Ross needs to be featured on these huge matches, not Michael Cole's voice. I mean, the Coach, Al Snow, Jerry Lawler, Jim Ross program that was done back in 2003 was more entertaining than what we're seeing now, with Michael Cole, Jerry Lawler, and Jim Ross being involved in somewhat of a three-way angle, with Jerry Lawler remaining somewhat impartial between the two commentators. Here's my opinion on it all. Why in the hell is announcing getting more on TV time than the Intercontinental Championship or the United States Championship? I respect the fact that they're trying to bring back some integrity to the Intercontinental Championship with the restoration of the original title, but why are the announcers having more in-ring time given to them than the Intercontinental Championship, which meant so much to the business for the likes of Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret and Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels, who gave some of their best wrestling matches over the Intercontinental Championship? Why is the Intercontinental title being a close second to the announcers' angle that's been developing on Raw and SmackDown over the last 6 months? I don't have an answer for you about it. I really can't comment on it. I don't know why the announcers are getting more in ring time than the Intercontinental Championship. I read a report somewhere on ProWrestling.com that Mr. McMahon was significantly high